I'm James Wright, and welcome to the shop. Yeah, Sarah's not here, so I'm in the bottom window for the moment, but I'm going to walk over here and we'll get this thing started. So welcome back. We're doing another session with the what is this thing called? End table, side table. Yes. And if you want to follow along with this, we are doing the whole build live. We'll be doing it in about 5 sessions. So we're going to be doing this whole project basically completely live here. So if you want to do that, the plans are completely free. You can download those. They're on my website. There's links to that down below. And you can build along with us. There is also a link to the past videos. So if you want to go back and look at those, we'll have 2 more sessions after this, hopefully. We'll see how it goes. Yeah, that's about it. This is a very basic beginner's project, there's the word. And so anyone can follow along. This can be the very first project you do. It's fairly straightforward and simple. So in the past, we have cut things to size, we glued up the tops, we tapered the legs, and today we're actually going to be doing the mortise and tenon joint. So I did a couple really quick ones, and I tried to see how fast I could do it. And I was able to do 2 tenons and 2 mortises in a total of 4.5 minutes. Or no, 5.5 minutes. You can actually see how these came out. A bit rough on here, but the nice thing is the shoulder will cover them up, so you can have a rough entrance as long as everything else has a gluable surface. So today we're going to be making 2 that hopefully look a little bit better because we're going to take our time and do it right. So basically we have 2 stretchers. Let me make sure I got this right. C into C that go into here, and they'll create the corner of the table. And so we're going to end up with 4 stretchers and 4 legs and 4 corners. So each leg gets 2 joints into it. And we want to be a little bit tight so that the glue has something to hold on to. But the idea is that this won't be fully tight. It will look something like that when done. Now, the most important thing is layout at this point, because things can get very tricky, particularly when you're hand cutting anything. And also, sorry, Sarah is not here, so if you have any comments, go ahead and throw those in the chat, and she might be able to catch them later. Otherwise, wait until she arrives. She's actually at JJ's soccer game, which got bumped off due to weather. So yeah, she'll be coming here soon. At this point, layout becomes very important because we are hand cutting these. They're all going to be ever so slightly different. And you're never going to get away from that. If you're hand cutting them, you can make them really, really close. And eventually you'll get to the skill level where you could make any tenon fit into any mortise. But most of the time, they're all going to have their own quirks, and some tenon might end up being a little bit fatter or a little skinnier, or have slightly different shapes. So it's good to make the tenon match one particular mortise and no other. And that way you know these 2 go together and they always fit. The problem is you have to have everything marked so you know which 2 to go together, and it's not these 2 because these 2 boards look identical. Just how do you tell that? So you need to come up with a marking rubric that fits you. For me, I actually do it like this on my boards. I put a piece of tape on my reference face. And my reference face then is the most important face. And so this is always the outside. This is the side that people see. So on a table, the skirts, I have all of them marked on the outside of the table. And then on the legs, the problem with that is the leg is always showing, and so I generally don't want to put any marks or tape on them. And so I usually put those on the ends. And so on the ends of mine, I put these on here. The arrow is always pointing forward, so I know this is the front face of the leg. This is leg A. This is leg C, and then each one is, A, B, C. And then on my boards, I have marked B and C. So this end of the board goes into leg C. This end of the board goes into leg B. This side is up. And that way, I don't have to know which side is front. I just know that by the arrow. So I know C goes into C, and that's up. So that means it can't go into this one because then it would be pointing down. So that means it goes into this one. And that way, I can always keep that out. That's just the system I use. There's no right or wrong or method to them, as long as you have them labeled so that they're all marked out and follow around. I like to use tape rather than marking out. Some people like to use pencil because then you can come back with a smoother and clean them off. But just whatever you want to use. So we're going to start by cutting one tenon. And the nice thing about this is we're going to have a tenon on both ends. The first tenon doesn't matter at all. You can make it a little longer, you can make it a little shorter. It doesn't matter at all, because the only important measurement in this whole thing is the distance from this shoulder to the other shoulder. And so if you make this one a little bit longer, well, then that just means this tenon is going to be a little bit shorter, because the only measurement we're going to take is from end to end. My plans are going to say 5/8. The reason being is if you put this stretcher in the middle of the leg, 5/8 makes it so that the two corners just touch. So theoretically that should be the right size, but you could make one longer and have the other one stop into it. You could actually make them through tenons and actually make them pass inside the joint. The way we're doing this is just a very simple, very basic way. And for a small table like this, you don't need an incredible amount of joint strength. You don't need draw bores. You can do all that type of thing, but it's not terribly necessary. So first thing we need to do is lay out the tenon. I like to do the tenon first because I find it much, much easier to transfer the marks from the tenon onto the mortise. It's very hard to transfer marks from mortises onto tenons. At least that's my thought process. For the first one, I'm just going to measure in 5/8. Actually, I think I had a marking gauge set at 5/8. Okay. And so that becomes really easy to mark it off. For the second one, I don't really care that this side is exactly 5/8. The important thing is the distance from the shoulder to the shoulder. So according to the plans, let me find the right page. There it is. What do I have of the shoulder to shoulder? Oh my, I didn't put that measurement. I'm gonna have to redo that one. Shoulder to shoulder. So it's 1 foot 2 1/4 total, minus 5/8 twice. That's going to get you 3/4. So that's going to be 1 foot 1 1/2. Yay, English math! So I'm going to grab my tape measure, which is, oh, it's over here. That's what I get. I'm going to measure out 1 foot 1 1/2. And I have to make a clarification. Even the measurement on the first one from shoulder to shoulder doesn't matter. As long as all four are the same, it's still going to be square. So if you make it a little longer, a little shorter, it doesn't matter. The second one you come to, you have one made shoulder to shoulder, and you use the second one to mark everything else. This becomes your pattern. Sometimes I'll even put a small P in the bottom middle to know this is the pattern that all the others off, and I can use that to mark all of the others. So for the first one, you can shove it a little bit because it just matters that they all be the same so that you end up with a square. But in this case, we're going to follow the plans because we have plans. I'm going to go 1 foot 1 1/2. 1 foot 1 and no. 1 foot 1 1/2 is not right because that's right on the end of the board. Total length should be 2 foot 2 1/4. I have 2 foot 2 1/4, yeah.
1 foot 2 1/4, and then 5/8 and 5/8 is.
Oh, it's 3 1/4. 1 1/4. I was thinking 3/4 for some reason. So 1 1/4 off of the end brings it down to 1 foot 1 inch. That looks better. So I'm going to mark it at 1 foot 1 inch. And now that I've got that on there, we can grab. I'm going to grab the other square. Which is, oh yeah, it is. Just looking at it backwards. And I've got my reference face, which on this one is the top edge of my board. So I'm going to put that on here, mark into that, and we're going to go around it. For the first side, I just use a marking gauge. Let's see how close we are. Holy cow, that's like dead on.
Wow.
Let me show you that. That's right on the line. How do you like that? So usually on my first side, I'm just going to use the marking gauge. And since that is so dead on, I'm just going to use this to go around. And just go on like that. And I know my ends are true. I shot them. So we can be careful with that. And there, I've marked all the way around the board. That is the shoulder. And so the most important thing is the distance from the shoulder to the shoulder. The actual length of the tenon, you can fudge a little bit. Let's see if there's any questions I'm missing. Okay, good. If you do throw a question on, if you can put something big and bold that I can see and pick it up pretty quickly. Next thing I'm going to do is put this into the vise. And I'm going to show this up a little bit closer because this is the fun part. This is probably the most tricky thing of the whole step, is just getting this all lined up right. I put it in the vise from here on because I'm going to be needing to saw it as well as mark it. It's just nice to have it all locked in. Oop, that's not what we want. There we go, that's better. And I'm gonna grab my mortising chisel. And this one is a 1/4 inch-ish. It's actually a little bit fatter than a 1/4 inch, which is really about what I like. It's one of the things where it really doesn't matter what the thickness is or measurement. Anywhere from 3/8 to a 1/4 inch, you're perfectly fine. Anywhere in between there. And then I want my marking gauge, not that one. I want this one. This one I already have set up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this on here for the very first one. I'm going to set this on here, and I'm just going to eyeball where center is. It doesn't matter where it is. You can have it more to one side or the other. It's just center looks good. I'll put a mark on one side, and I'm going to put a mark on the other side. And then I can set my pins on my mortising gauge to those two, making sure that my fence is on here. Because I want to make sure, take that one off there, I don't want that on there. I want to make sure I have my reference face on this side. And I'll leave a little bit of tape showing up here so I can look down and see it. If it's in the middle of the vise, I can't remember which side it is. And so what I can do is I can set this on here, and I can set those two pins into this mark. I already have this set up, so I don't want to mess around. And it becomes much, much easier to set the distance off the shoulder to both of the pins, having them on here. Rather than trying to measure them on here, you get the two pins set, and then you have to set the fence the right distance, and you end up bumping those pins around. It's easier to mark this, and then set the pins onto those marks. And so I always have my fence on my reference side, and we're going to mark across the top. And I'm going to come down to the shoulder line, mark up, come down to the shoulder line, mark up. Just want to make sure that those are good and clean and easy to see. Then, because this is a tenon, we're going to grab a tenon saw. Tenon saw is much deeper, so it can go into it. Because this is only 5/8 inch, I could use a dovetail saw. There's nothing special about it. And it's just going to be like any other cut. I'm going to start, actually I'm going to do this one so the camera can see first. I'm going to start over here. I'm going to start on the far side, nick it in, and I'm going to slowly bring the heel in until I follow across. Let me get you a little closer image so you guys can see this a little better. Not that good. There we go. So I'm going to start over here. And you want to be on this side? Now I'm traveled all the way across. And then I'm going to cut down on the line on my side. So I can see it here and I can see it here. I can't see it here, so I'm not going to cut down this side. I'm going to go at a 45 and cut from corner to corner so I can touch this corner and this corner back here. That way I'm only cutting what I can see. And so now I'm focusing on my side over here, steering that cut right along that line. And I'm down to the depth here, so now I'm just going to push this side down until I'm touching this corner and this corner back here. And there. So now I'm corner to corner. I'm going to come over to this one while I'm here. Remember, go on the other side of the line. All the way across. Follow my line down here. Down on my side. And now corner to corner again. There we go. Now, I could continue it down and hope I hit those lines on this side. Or I can take it out and flip it around. And now I can go corner to corner the other way and always be cutting on my side of the line so I always see what I'm cutting. And so now I'm just going to follow down the line on my side and then connect the dots, because now I have this kerf going all the way across, down to depth here, down to depth on the other side. Back on this one, cut down to depth on my side, always on the side I can see, and now connect the dots. Down to depth, down to depth. There is our cheek cuts. And then for the tenons, I'm going to come back over here. Oop, drop my GoPro. Let's put that over here. GoPro number 3, it's not really valuable. Comments I'm missing. Nope. So now I can put this in the vise and we can cut the shoulders. And for this, I could use a carcass saw, I could use a sash saw. I generally would use the carcass saw because it's not quite as tall. But the more I use this saw, the more I absolutely love it. It's the one from Jared Green. And it's just gorgeous. And my Tenon saw is a nice saw. It's a Veritas, really nice saw. It's just not this good. So on this one, here, let me turn this back around. Come on, give me the right focus. There we go. Now, we're going to do pretty much the same thing. Because it's a shallower cut, we can just do it all from one side. Starting on the far side, and I'm going to drop the heel until it goes all the way across. Down to depth on my side. Now on my side, I'm actually just looking at the reflection, there's the word, and I want to keep that flat. And go until that piece pops off. Should be right about there. Which side do I need a little more on? No, a little more on the back side. There we go. Now, I like to come in and clean it up here because it's all in place. I cut right on that line, so this shoulder actually looks really nice and clean. I should have a chisel here.
This one?
Oh, thank you. And so if I stayed away from the line, this would be the time I'd come back and chop it too, but I like cutting right to the line. I have to actually no, that's actually really good. Yeah, I can see my marking gauge line here. So I just got a hair to take off there. And I could come in with like a shoulder plane, but I like freehanding it with a chisel. That's all I need. I just want to make sure that I'm right on that marking gauge line that I left all the way around. Gonna flip it over. Do the other side. Again, looking at the reflection. Almost. One more pass. There we go. And I like doing it in the vise. You generally like doing it in a bench hook, right?
Yeah, that's what I've done more, yeah.
Okay. You see how this one looks? Yeah, this one needs just a hair cleanup on this side too. You just see the marking gauge line, so I'm going to come in here, just trim it back. If in doubt, you can undercut a little bit. And there. Oh, just a little more. There. Now we've got our tenon. And this is on tenon B. I didn't see which leg was B. I guess I should have looked at that ahead of time. A, C, those are yours, no, those are mine.
Here's B.
B. Okay. So I've got B. I know this is up, and this is forward. So up needs to be, if that's forward, so that means that it's this one right here. Now, we need to know where it actually intersects in the leg. Do we want it towards the front? Do we want it towards the back? Let me show that up a little closer here. I like to split it right down the middle, especially something 1.5 inches. I like it to go right into the middle of the leg, not forward, not back. You usually want a little bit of relief for the leg sticking out past, but I prefer to keep mine right about the middle. So if it's in the middle and this is eyeballed in the middle, then I want my tenon to be in the middle. And so at this point, I need to lay out another marking gauge. And that's one of the reasons why I absolutely love having a 4-beam marking gauge, so I could have multiples on it. Otherwise, the problem was earlier I lost this, and so I ended up having to use, here they are. I have all of these marking gauges set up when I could have just set up this, but I couldn't find it earlier. It was driving me bonkers. Oh, sorry, I'm on the wrong camera. Let me show you that a little closer. I want this, you're probably saying on the wrong camera. I want this to be in the middle of the board. I don't want it to be towards the front or towards the back. In this case, it actually needs to go, into that one. There we go. Also, I'm not cutting a 3-sided tenon. I'm not cutting a 4-sided tenon. It's just easiest to cut with just the 2 faces. And since this is a beginner project, we're just going to cut with the 2. The downside to that is this edge down here will be visible. When it's here, you'll see the joint in between the 2. So if I cut this shoulder back just a little bit farther, then that would hide that joint and make it very, very clean. That just means that the bottom of our cut joint here, we need to make sure that's really nice and clean so it can sit on that. So I need to lay out my marking on here. Now I could come in with that marking gauge I had set earlier, but that's set for a 3/4 inch material, and I need something that's set at 1.5 inches. So I'm going to do the exact same thing again. So I'll set this on here, I'll eyeball where the middle is, and I'll mark both sides of that. Then I grab my other marking gauge, or in this case I could have a 4 that does both all at once, but I couldn't find it. And I'm going to come in with this one, which is automatically set up with both of those wheels in there. But before I do that, I lost it. Which one are we at? Forward. So that means we're into this side. Yep, that side. Before we do that, I need to know how far down is this cut coming, because that's the important mark. Our width here, moving it forward and backward, you can fudge on that without any problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the reality of this board, and I'm going to set it on here. I'm going to, don't want to hit the buttons. I'm going to put that on here, and now I know that the depth of this is going to be exactly what reality is on this particular tenon. So if for some reason my board narrows, like that one board that I have that is slightly thinner at one end, I can make sure my tenon matches that exactly, rather than just relying on what it could be, what it should be, but isn't always. So I'm going to flush it up to the end, and make a mark on here, and there I know is the end of mine. Actually, before I cut this, I'm going to have you cut your tenon.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're going to get behind.
Sounds good.
If anyone has any questions, now would be the time I can actually look at the comments. I'm going to have Dave here cut his tenon. And clear all this out of the way.
All right.
Okay.
So let's see.
First thing is marking the depth of the shoulder. And so I had that one set at 5/8.
Right.
And as long as you know that the end of your board is true and square, you can just use a marking gauge to mark the 5/8 all the way around it. Also, because the tenon is going into it, having the mark going all the way around isn't going to be a problem. You're not going to see it. It's going to be inside the wood. If you were doing something where a face would be showing, you'd only want it on one side or the other, such as dovetails. But in this case, that's all we need. Can you see it? And that's the great question. That's one of the reasons why I had a lot of people asking me about this marking gauge that's 3D printed with the pencil, because then you can see it. As they get older, pencils become more obscure. Yeah. I got a question here. Do you use a router plane to clean up your tenons? I generally don't. It works well, don't get me wrong. I just find it is very, very easy to mess it up, because it's very, very easy for it to tip and dive out. There's nothing holding the other side. And so you have to make a lot of down pressure. I made this one a while ago that I do use it for. It has a large surface area, so I can reference a lot of the board and clean it out. This works really well. But I found the tenon doesn't have to be perfectly parallel with the face. It has to be parallel with the other side of the tenon. And so that's the only thing that matters. And that's what the marking gauge gives you.
Now I just take this and put it as close to the center as I
but I already have that laid out for you.
Oh, okay. So I don't
if you want to.
Well, yeah, but
you can do it when you get home to do the other sides.
Yeah.
And then at this point, the most important thing is keeping that fence tight against the side. Now, marking an end grain can be very difficult to see. I generally prefer using a pin because it becomes a little bit easier to see, and it doesn't follow the grain quite as much as the roller does. But sometimes when I need both, I've got these. Though, now that I've got this one, I really wish I could find it earlier, because I have this one all set up with marks for another project I'm working on. And so I found this one, but this one was hiding in plain sight over here. And I was telling Dave ahead of time, I set up all these marking gauges, and I wish I just had the one that had all of those. And he's like, are you talking about this one? I'm like, sure, you find it. What angle do you use when planing white oak? If I'm going with the grain and regular planing, I'm just using the regular 45. If it is going all over the place and I'm doing my final smoothing, I usually take it up to a 50 degree, and then I set in all of my other standards. Though I want to play with a 55. I've been playing with a 55. Just the 50 degrees easier to set up. So there you go. Most of the time, white oak is pretty good. You go with the grain and it planes out well. But if it's going wild, then not as much fun. Yeah, another trick you can do is you can actually lean the board away from you so that you can see both sides, but I prefer to do it vertical for something like this. It's such a shallow angle.
Right.
But if it were a longer tenon where you're doing like a 45-degree angle, then it's easier to tip it.
Okay.
Oh, I got another question. I'll come take a look at that in a moment. So, yeah, starting on the other grain, because the grains are coming up and you're kind of diving into
So I
them.
should start on this side? You think?
Sometimes. It's one of those cuts. I prefer to cut over there just because I've gotten used to it.
Mm-hmm.
But starting in, sometimes it's easier to start on the front side so that you're cutting with the grain rather than against it. But then that's where leaning helps.
Yeah.
Here. See if I can show this. Now when it's catching like that, it means you're putting too much weight on the saw. You need to actually lift it up and put more weight on the back of your palm. And so think about resting the saw on that bottom horn and lifting the weight off it. Let it slide back and forth, just touching your fingernail before touching the wood. There you go. And follow the line on your side of the board first. Yeah, this tenon saw has a little bit bigger teeth, so it tends to catch.
Actually, I think I need to
lay it down now.
But now it's hard to.
Come over here. There's a question. How long do you think it's going to be before you get some more brass knobs in? I don't know. Brass knobs are, well, the foundry that is doing them is currently closed and will be closed, I think he said through July, so probably mid to late August, maybe, but it's probably going to be a while. So, sorry. I think I actually have one tall brass knob still in stock, though everything is listed as on back order. So someone's going to get lucky when they order that one tall brass knob. Oops. Yeah, some saws, like Joinery Green has become very renowned for making progressive pitch. So the front teeth are smaller, though I usually start in the middle of the saw, just my style, so I don't use that as much. But if you are having trouble starting a saw, progressive pitch might make that easier. Hello from West Virginia. Yes. Dave is performing a cross cut, rip cut, because you're going with the grain. Cross cut is going across the grain. Rip cut is going with the grain. As imagine just taking the board and ripping it, you're actually going with the grain. So yeah, in this case, you might actually find it easier tipping it forward and starting on the back tooth because it's already planed that way, that angle.
Like, oh, you mean? Like,
No, like just
like
starting it like that,
yeah,
starting
like
on the far side,
okay,
yeah.
Yeah.
Because now you have that angle there to hold it.
Right.
You created the curve. Now think about taking some weight off the saw. If you find it catching, when you're pushing in, it just suddenly stops. That usually means you're putting too much weight on the blade itself, and just lift it up a little bit. Can't wait for you to get coopering tools. Yeah, one of these days I want to do some coopering. I've played with it a bit, but yeah, not yet. Someday. Maybe if I have a bigger shop where I can do more things, but right now, not so much. I've got a Cooper's plane over there, in the process of working and getting it up and running, but not right now. Ah, Sarah's back. I know you prefer the marking gauge, but would you use the marking gauge and then run a pencil? I don't like running a pencil in a marking gauge line. I find it skips out and then you get this weird line going across that is harder to see. I'd rather actually mark with a pencil. So where'd that go? Like I have this marking gauge you put a pencil in. I'd rather just do that straight off than trying to mark on a marking gauge line. But it's just personal preference. And then from this point on, it's just experience. knowing how to make the saw cut smoother and cleaner. Just comes down to tiny little micro wrist movements, keeping your arm in line. Yeah, this is where the skill comes in, and the only way you get it is from doing it more. Yeah, pretty close.
I think I'm down, yeah.
You got on both sides?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. Here, I'm gonna move this around. Do you want to do it in the bench hook?
I suppose.
6 of one, half a dozen of another.
Yeah.
Here.
And this saw.
Unless you want to use the carcass saw.
I'll use this.
And the difference between bench hook and doing it in the vise is really just personal preference. I like doing it in a vise. I just find it a little bit easier to hold. But a bench hook is really nice to just be able to do and walk away.
Oh, I'm too far over, aren't I? I'm like
Yeah, you're past the line a little ways. What you could, well, yeah, you can do it left-handed, do it on the other side, and then you can start the other corner. But or start on the closer one. Hey, she's here. Now, straight cuts. Straight cuts are more to do with micro adjustments of the hand. The big difference between Japanese and Western saws is Western saws are over-controlled. Any slight movement of the wrist to the elbow, the shoulder, anywhere along that, you're going to make the saw do weird things. That's because the leading tooth is on your side of the cut, and so it can go all over. But the nice thing about it is once you get those micro controls down, you can put that saw exactly where you want. And if it hits something that starts going off, you can bring it right back to instantly. But the only way you can do that is to get that skill that takes a long time to get. There are some things you can do to increase it, such as understanding the hand into the arm and up the shoulder, keeping that straight and getting that nice straight cut does. How close are we? Let me see. I need to come down a little more on here, on this side.
Oh, yeah.
And if you do go past on the tin a little bit, that's not a problem. There we go, break it off. Question, do you work on a Roman bench? I have. I don't like Roman benches. I don't like the short sitting on a bench. It's a very different style. Just like Japanese woodworking is a very different style. It's not my thing to do. It's just personal preference. But no, I don't like doing that. And if you are finding problems with cutting right on the tenon, move a hair off of it. You can always chisel back to the line. Though often, if you're chiseling to the line, the chisel is going to cause more problems. So if you can cut right on the line, then cut right on the line. But again, that's a skill. It's one of those things about hand tools. Every tool requires a certain amount of skill. It's not something you can just set up and use. I just splintered off a little bit.
Yeah, but I feel like it's actually the other cut.
The other one might be, yeah.
Just doesn't it?
Yeah. Put it back in and go a little deeper. 33, okay, we're doing good. So you can see where I was with questions. How did the game go?
You don't want to know.
I feel bad for our son. They've lost every single game so far. Have they won any?
Yep.
I don't think they won anything. It's sad. Okay, so now let me do a close-up on this and talk about the cleanup. Oh, have I been on this one the whole time? I'm sorry. I thought I was on the other camera. So in this case, here, let me actually zoom in on this. I want to show, because this is one of the things that's hard to see. Anytime you see lines from the saw, that's usually an indication that something is fat or something is thick. On this side, I can see the marking gauge depth here. So we're a little bit fat here. And then you can see another line over on this corner. Oop, here, I'm going to bring that back into focus. Where's my marking knife? Show that a little bit better. So there's a line right here. That lets me know that this is fat as well. So on this side's a little bit better. There's a line over here. So this, yeah, I can tell it's just a hair fat right here. And then we've got this extra dross over here to chip back. So to do that, usually what I find is, let me show a couple different methods on here, and I'll let you take some of it. Is on this one, is I can grab the chisel. These here, like this side is pretty good. So I'm just going to start here and I'm going to pare it back. And I know my marking gauge line is where I want to be. So I'm actually going to undercut it just a hair. Because you can always undercut. Undercut is rarely a problem. You don't want to do it too much, but do it just enough. And we can just take all that back. And then I can come in with a corner of the knife. I can use it like the corner of the knife, corner of the chisel. I'm just going to cut all the way along there until I'm through those.
But he makes it look so easy.
Got that one right there. Okay, this side is pretty good. The other way we can do it is I could grab a shoulder plane. And I'm not actually touching the shoulder because the shoulder actually looks really good. And if you're cutting right on the line, the shoulder should look good. It's actually pretty rare, especially for a small shoulder like this. I could come in here and just share that back. I don't want to do too much because it's right where it needs to be. But on this side, you may actually find that useful. Because on this side, we've got more of this. So it's pretty fat from here to here. So on this one, what you can do is start here in the middle and travel through until just before and stop. And then you could chisel that off, because if you go all the way through, you might actually blow out the backside.
Oh, right, yeah.
So here, I'll let you back it up with just a hair more. Start like a ½ inch from the beginning.
About there.
Yeah.
Oops.
Yeah.
And
And then you could turn around and bring it back this way, or you could just take a chisel on that.
Oh, well, let me try the chisel. That seems easier right now. I don't know.
Another skill. And if you start at the top and go straight down, so put it right into that line and just pare straight down. Bring the chisel up a little more vertical, pointing back into the tenon.
Oh, yeah. Like that?
Yep. And just pare it down. There you go.
All right.
Oop! Ah! Camera down! And yeah, that'll do.
All right.
Maybe a hair fat. Yeah, it is just a little bit more. What I've got here, once you feel this, just having my fingers on here, I can tell that this side, it's clean at the top, right where the marking gauge is, but this side kind of leans out a little bit right here. If you slide your finger along it, you can kind of feel where it gets a little fatter.
Yeah, right there, especially there's an actual bump. Yeah.
It's amazing what your fingers can give you a little bit of feedback. So in this case, that was one of the problems with this, is when this is going in here, it's actually leaning a little bit. So you could come in and try and lean it back the opposite direction. But when you do that, you have all these fibers sticking up and they tend to jam it a bit. Or my favorite way is actually just to come in, here, I'll come in like this so people can see, is I'll start, I'm not starting all the way at the top, I'm coming down an 1/8 inch or so, pushing the bit in there and just paring it down. Pushing it in and paring it down. I'm just making that fat area just a little bit thinner, just like that.
Cool.
You spend a little bit of time at this point on the tenon and everything works out a lot better. Get rid of any junk in there. Yeah, feel that now.
Oh yeah, it's much more even. Yeah.
Cool. So there is our tenon. And we're running a little bit behind, so I'm just going to go straight into you doing yours, and I'm going to talk through it. So, leg. Where is your A leg?
Right here.
So where does this go into that one?
So this goes, wait. Goes like that.
This label on the inside or the outside?
Outside.
So this is your inside, right?
That's, yeah. That's
So it'd be like this then.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we want it on this side with the dot. So we're going to take this one, we're going to lay it straight down in here into the vise. And first thing we want to do is mark how deep that mortise is going to go. So how far down this way. So we can grab this one, set it on here, and then you can mark out where that's at. Bring this back around.
Just make that flush and then
Yep, just
oops, other way.
flat side towards it and just put a nick in there.
There we
You
go.
see it?
Yep.
Okay, then grab that little square.
This square.
Okay, yep. And you want to put it on, you have to remember this side is tapered here, so you want the
Like
angle,
this?
because if you put it on, if you put it
Right.
back here, it's going to angle it
Yep,
out that
yep,
way.
yep.
So you want to make sure it's back on this side, or
That side.
that side is probably going to be a little easier for you to hold. And we don't need to go all the way across, just a little bit in the middle to create the bottom. And this is the most important mark of the whole thing. If anything else is off, then oh well. So this is an inside face, and this is an inside face. So this is your outside. So we want that to be our reference surface.
Okay.
Okay, and on this one, I've got this one set up. So, let's go ahead and mark this. We'll just do from there on up, and from there on up. And then on the top, I want these ones just to kind of continue on through. And those can go on past, because we'll use that as the stop mark when we put it in, because the other tenon will be coming in from this side.
Right.
So that becomes the stop mark for the other side. So I could come over with this one and theoretically create that as the stop mark for this side. I just want to make sure that this tenon is, in fact, that distance. And hey, look at that. That's not half bad. So we've got our marks there. I'm going to make the first cut on this one, and then I'll have you do the other side. So I like to actually cut out from point to point with a saw. Just makes it a little bit easier. And again, I'm going to grab the tenon saw. So if you want to step over to this side, let me make sure I'm in frame. And let me zoom in just a hair more. Not that much. Right into here. So I'm going to start by doing that pinching technique. Let it slide on my thumbnail. Come over here, and I want to be on the inside of that mark, because we're cutting the mortise now. I'm just going to start it, and I'm going to come down along this line, not going deep on the back side here, because I'm cutting on the side that I can see. I'm going to follow that line right down until I get really close to that. And then I'm going to look here on the back, and I'm actually going to go past my mark on this side, because it's better to cut deeper than not deep enough. So I'm down almost about halfway through the leg there.
Okay.
And I should have stopped up here at the actual cut, but that's perfectly fine. Why don't you try the other side? Any questions, babe?
Yes. Not necessarily related to what you're doing, but questions.
What we got?
So John Hayes has two of them. The first one is, do you prefer traditional hand tools over power tools?
They each have their own place. I use hand tools because I teach hand tools. If I use power tools, I wouldn't be teaching the hand tools. If I were doing this just for my own sake and building my own things, I'd be a solidly hybrid shop. But there is a certain fun of just being able to do something with your own hands.
Is that as far as I
You went a
want to
little
go?
bit too far. Yeah, it's pretty close.
Yeah, I think that's
But
actually
you want to go, yeah, now you can start going back on this side. That may just be the marking gauge line, yeah. Or no,
I
it's
think
grain.
I think that's the grain. Yeah.
Yeah. What was the other question?
Do you work with wood that's kiln-dried for furniture making, or does it not matter?
I work with both. I prefer air-dried. Air-dried is so much nicer to work with hand tools. Kiln-dried is just crispy and crackly. Air-dried is just smooth and buttery. Let me just see that one more. Because I think, yeah, you went like there, but then didn't draw this line back to here as well.
Okay.
Because if you make that connection, it'll make a longer, if you go all the way from this corner to that corner.
Right. Like that? Is that good?
We'll just bring this end a little bit deeper. Because the more you can take out with this, the easier it is to remove that waste. You're not going to be able to get all the way down into the corner, but yeah, right about there. So now we have basically a big mortise. And normally I'm going to come in, make sure I'm in focus here. Normally I'm going to come in with my mortising chisel, and I'm going to start here, and I'm just going to power through it like I normally would. I wouldn't drill this all out because it's such a long and narrow. I'd have to drill, a dozen or so holes, and that would take forever. Just chopping it becomes faster like this. And I'm going to do it in the vise because this is tapered. If we had cut this all out before we tapered it, which there are some pros and cons of doing that, then you just put it on the bench. But I prefer to taper it then do that, because sometimes the taper is going to be chipping things out and then you want to go back and do something else. The mortising is the harder of the two steps. I'm going to stay away from that line. So I've got that marking gauge line. I do not want to put the tip in there.
Right.
I'm going to move it back here and hammer, thank you. And I'm just going to go tap, move it back a little ways, and so I'm just starting it like I normally would, because at this end, there really is no saw cut. I'm basically creating a regular mortise here. I'm going to do 3 or 4, working my way back. And now I'm down a little ways here. And at this point, I'm starting to get into those saw cuts. So I'm going to come back around over to this side, and I'm going to come in an 1/8 inch or so. I'm just going to bust out that. And I want to be very careful not to go into the corners, taking my time on this, but now I've got that big chunk that came out. And then I can go down a little farther. And at this point I start getting harder because I'm not getting all the way in.
Did you
But I can still run that back.
specify what size chisel you were using? Right
1/4 inch.
now? 1/4 inch.
Ish.
Okay.
And then I'm going to keep going down until I get to that line. But one trick I have is my depth gauge, which is...
Saw it here. Here it is.
This is the favor I got from Pacific Northwest Tool Collectors. And so I have this set up to the same thickness as our tenon, so I know how far it is. I have a video actually making a larger version of this, which is very, very useful. And I can set this in there and know I've got that much more to go. So I'm going to set this up for you. So at this point, you've kind of got two things. You have about 1 inch of regular mortise, and then you have this you can pop out. And so I like to pop out as much as I can, but eventually you're going to find that it's kind of splintering, and then you can come back with a chisel and chop it off and just clean out that corner like you would a normal mortise. So you're kind of doing half and half. So why don't you have a little bit of fun with it? Any questions while I'm doing that? While Dave's doing that?
Let's see. What saws were used back in the day before specialty saws were made?
Specialty saws, they've been around since Egyptian time. You had different teeth for different processes and different methods. That's just something you find out really quickly.
You do this bevel up or bevel
bevel
down?
down.
Bevel down. That's what
Yep. Yeah, specialty saws have been around since someone made the second saw.
Was that a seesaw?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that a seesaw?
They were ocean-faring folk. They had a seesaw.
Wow.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to this line, right?
Yep.
There. Yep.
Yep, that line. And so this is where you can kind of be. You can go a little faster. You can go a little slower. Is what you've got. Where did my other leg go? It's down here. Let me show everyone else on the camera some of the problems you can run into at this point. Is you can have things out of focus, and that is always a problem. So I've got on this one, where's my marking knife? There it is. On this one, I have a blowout here because the chisel came in and I levered it up, but my chisel wasn't straight in. It was actually cockeyed a little bit. So when it came up, it caught the edge and chipped that out. And on this one, I did the same thing, but farther down in here. Now the other thing you're going to notice is that these two inside corners meet. So I blew out a little bit in there, but that's really not a problem. Glue is just going to be filling up that gap in there. So the corner of this one meets and the corner of that one meets. Some people will cut the tenons all the way down and actually make the tenon 45 degrees at the end, so it can go in a little farther. Structurally, it doesn't add that much more strength. Or you could have one of them continue on through, or you can have half the tenon continue on through on the top and the other half of the tenon continue through on the bottom. There's a lot of different ways to do it, but this is just a good beginner's way to do it. And they don't have to be perfect because the shoulder is going to cover up this blowout, as long as the blowout doesn't go too far. Let me see what we got. Okay, it's around this time. I want to grab that depth gauge and just do a little bit of learning about how far do you need to go at any particular point.
Okay, here, can I get this out first? Come on.
Now, one of the reasons why you stay away from that line is that levering out.
Did I lever out?
You've crushed a few of the fibers.
Yeah.
But you're still you're close to it. As long as you leave a little bit there, you can play with.
All right, so I still need to go a little deeper. See here? Oh no, even I thought. Here I'm okay, but almost immediately.
Okay. Let me show you another quick trick here. Focus. So I'm going to come in with this bevel down in here, and I'm going to use it kind of like a router plane. So I'm going to come in a little ways until it stops, and then I'm going to use that to lever out some of that junk. And then I'm going to go in a little farther without hitting my camera, which is easier said than done. So now I've got a nice flat bottom along there, but it's probably not at depth. It's like
Close,
16th
but not
inch or
quite,
so,
yeah.
and I'm good to depth here. So I find where I'm at depth, and I know that's where my chisel needs to go. And from that point on, I'm going to lift the chisel up a little bit. And that lets it dive in. I'm trying to do it at the right height, but the camera's in the way.
Yeah. Camera
It's almost like first person view at this.
And there, we've gotten that curl out of the way. That should be about the right thickness. And come in and, yeah, that's where I want to be.
Yeah.
Not touching the bottom there. So I'm all the way across there except for the last 1/4 inch or so. And at this point, then we can play it back and forth. We'll start up here, bevel away from the back. And if I cut too deep here, not a problem. Better to cut too deep than not deep enough. And then we can clear out those that same way. And so now we're about 16th inch or so away.
Okay.
So I'll let you do the last one. The last couple, we're going to about 2 chops left. This one is going to go in, and it's going to want to try and tip back away from that. You want to try and kind of undercut it a little bit. And on that last one, we actually want to undercut it a good bit.
All right.
I have 2 questions when you get
What
to
you
that
got?
point. First one is from Nicolas Demers. How different are a bench chisel and a mortise chisel for this kind of work?
A bench chisel is just thinner. A mortising chisel is stoutier, beefier, and you can whale on the thing without bending it. The problem with a bench chisel is if you ever find yourself levering stuff out, it's very easy to bend the chisel. Not good. Mortising chisel, you're not going to bend the thing. Do you need a mortising chisel? No, absolutely not. You can do anything you want with a bench chisel. You just have to be careful you're not bending it too far in actually doing it. You will find a lot of old chisels that are bent away because someone was levering them out. And they're almost always bent bevel side up because of that. And when getting the last little bit out, grab a smaller chisel and make sure you drop tools on the floor. And smaller chisels can be much easier at
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
moving everything out. So are we to depth all the way at the end? Hey, look at that. It's all day
There's still a
long.
little schmutz in there.
There's a little schmutz. Not by much. Let's do that. So let's see how it goes. Got that one. Do the favors. Arrow up.
Arrow up. And it's just a little tight.
Okay. So you have 2 options. Number 1, you just see how it looses. I like to stick one corner in, and I'll know up here it's kind of going in a little ways, but it's stopping a little ways down. But here in the middle, it's not going in at all. And here at the mouth, it's not going in at all. The other thing is we have it in a vise, so we may actually just be pinching it closed. I'm going to lift it up a little bit. I've done that a few times where I pull it out of the vise. Oh yeah, see now the arrows. That one's going in nicely. That one's a little stiff. Oh, I was doing it the wrong way. Nope, it needs to go
Yeah, because that's the top of the
that
table.
way. Yep, that way. So it's actually really close, but it's not going in here in the middle.
Yeah.
So I mean, I could do that, but we're bending it. That's just a hair too much. So you have the option of you can address this or you can address that. Which one do you want to address? With a shoulder plane, if you have a good shoulder plane set up nicely, one shaving, you're good. With this is actually my preferred way to do it. Just to come in with this, and you can see the junk that's sticking out there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it looks like, to some degree, doesn't which one you do,
And
if
so
you
I
can
do
tell where the issue is.
that. And I'll just pare out the sides just a hair. And usually the problem with that is that your mortising chisel tips one way or the other or moves to the side. And then I'm going to grab, where's that thinner
Where's that?
chisel?
There it is.
Grab that and clean out that junk. And I don't think it will fit because it was really close at the top. Yeah, see, it's it's going in here,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going in here, but it's not going into the middle. And I've got fairly straight sides on here. You can always use a chisel to check and make sure that this is straight.
Okay.
Actually, it isn't quite straight, is it?
Especially on that side. Well, maybe not. You just want.
Now, this side just has a bit of a belly here in the middle, actually. The other thing you can do is set this on here and make sure that that goes all the way across. And that one, there's actually a bit of belly on there. Yeah, so there is a bit of belly in this one. So where's that?
We want to.
Here, I'm just going to hold it. See if I can freehand it. Now, see, I'm not getting anything here in the middle, so why is that? A little bit. Let's see if that made a difference. It is better to take little shavings and check more often. Man, that's close.
You're back. You're up. You're on the. You're
Oh, I'm
backwards.
upside down. That is really, really close. See, that's almost to the point I would say drive it in, because you want this to be as tight as possible, because we're
Right.
not going to be painting it, we're gluing it tight is good, but it's just not quite there. I mean, we're in an 1/8 inch. So, you know, at this point, you're problem solving. And see, that one looks to be a bit undercut, so it should be a problem. That one looks good. So let's do one more shaving here in the middle. And because the shaving is all the way at the top, if the shaving is down in there, I'm going to start the chisel down inside the groove and cut down into it.
Right.
But because it's right at the top, I'm going to come in from this side and just pare it back. Take a thin shaving off right there. And where'd that one go? There it is. Let's remove those. Try that again. Oh, okay.
There you go.
That's what I'm looking for. I want it to rock down in with a bit of force. Okay, it's sticking up a hair on this side.
Oh, yep.
So you have two options. Number one, you can cut the gap down farther, or you could just come and plane this off when you're done. My preference is actually for this to be sticking up just a hair, because I'd rather have some meat here that I can pound down in, and then before attaching the tabletop, I'll plane a surface off all the way around.
Mm-hmm. Plus, if you mess up and overdo it,
Yeah.
you can't put wood back.
Yeah, and so I actually like that fit. That is clean too. Nice work.
All right.
That was just tipped a hair. You'll see tiny, tiny gap. That's okay, because when we put clamps on this, it's going to pull all that together. Because I'm seeing about the same gap on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And so we may actually be bottoming it out. You may want to come through and just shave it down a hair more. But most of the time, that gap there is just, you're not going to be able to squeeze it in all the way. But yeah, that's just about perfect, man.
All right.
Nice work. That's one.
All right.
Yeah.
What is
Seven
that?
more to go.
Yeah.
And this is the slowest part of the whole thing, is you've got to do it 8 times. But the nice thing about doing it 8 times is you're learning. And everything about hand tools is just doing it. You won't learn until you do it.
Mm-hmm.
You can watch every video, you can read every book, but until you teach that muscle what it takes, it's just doing it over and over again. There's a reason the apprentice process was decades.
Right.
Cool. What questions we got, babe?
We have a few.
Okay.
Let's see.
Got a couple minutes left.
Dennis Meko wants to know, is that too deep for the router plane?
No, my router plane will go down to 1 inch. Well, at 1/4 inch it won't, because the router plane iron, my 1/4 inch iron, can you hit the number 3?
Oh.
My 1/4 inch iron will only go down 1/4 inch about a 1/2 inch deep. Otherwise the body flares out into that shape. So no, I would not be able to reach the bottom with my 1/4 inch. I would be able to reach it with the 1/2 inch, but not with the 1/4 inch, unless I made a specific cutter for it. And honestly, the bottom of the mortise does not have to be level. If you're running into things that's not going down far enough, just cut it deeper. It doesn't have to be metal. There is absolutely no glue strength between the end of that and the leg. I mean, there is a little glue strength, And technically, if you do the math on it, it will add a few more pounds of structural strength in there. But over time, that is going to be the first point of glue that breaks. It is not going to add an actual structural strength that's worth anything. So you don't have to make the bottom flat. Don't even try. It's just not worth it. It's so much faster and easier to make it just a little bit deeper and not mess with it. So yeah, don't worry about it. What's next?
I have one more related to the project and one not.
Okay.
So John Hayes asked, did you invert the chisel at any point, and could you use a card scraper now?
Invert the chisel. If you're talking bevel down, most of the work is done bevel down. When you're cutting in, especially if it's in the vise, if you're coming in bevel up, that means it has to be flat. So that means the chisel has to be down in the vise. It just doesn't work that way. You'll find that the more experienced a person gets with a chisel, the more they use it bevel down for a lot of other purposes. It works really well with that. The difference is bevel up doesn't require much skill because you're going with the plane of the chisel. Bevel down requires more skill because I'm pounding it this way, but it's going that way. So it takes a certain wrist control here and striking at just the right point. It takes more skill to do bevel down, but again, with hand tools, that's the whole background to it.
Right.
What was the other half of the question?
Could you have used the card scraper?
For the outside, yes. On the tenon, no. Cleaning up a tenon with a card scraper, I mean, theoretically, yes. It's just it doesn't do as well across rough grain like that. Yeah, it could do the work. A chisel can do it faster and easier.
All right, one more question.
Okay.
Last question. Jose Morale wants to know, I have a low angle finishing plane, and when planing hardwoods, it does not work. Could you please explain why the difference in cutting angles is so significant when planing hardwoods?
Okay, I'm going to make a lot of people angry, but I'm going to make a statement here that's just the way I feel. There is no such thing as a low angle smoothing plane. You go low angle, and you're introducing all sorts of things whenever you get grain that changes direction. The lower your angle is, if you're going against the grain, it's going to want to get underneath those curls and pop them up. And so the wood will split ahead of the cut. And what happens is that split will propagate farther than the iron. So if the iron's here, the split may be all the way back down here. And that piece will start levering out until eventually it levers out so far that the iron cuts it off, and then it flaps back down. And that's where you get tear out, is you get all those little micro holes of the grain coming up and popping out. The lower the angle is, the more it gets underneath that, and the farther that will propagate. The higher the angle is, the more it will compress that curl earlier and shear it off earlier. So you get less tear out, smaller tear out with a higher angle. As to hardwood versus softwood, no, there's absolutely no difference in that. That just comes down to sharpness of the blade. And most of the time for a beginner, I'm going to say this and I'm sorry, I'm probably going to hurt your feelings, but it's the truth. It comes down to how sharp the blade is. Until you've actually felt really, truly, purely sharp, you're going to be chasing sharpness for a long time. Most beginners think they know what sharp is, but don't. That's when it comes down to planing difficult wood and hardwood, you've really got to get that thing sharp. So that's the thing you're chasing most of the time right off the bat. But yes, higher angle, better for reversing grain. But as to hardwood versus softwood, that doesn't make any difference. Both planes will do it very well. So hope that answered your question. I know, I just started a bunch of arguments. I love doing that. But I think I'll do it. When's our next one?
Next Tuesday. Yeah.
Is it next week?
Yes, next week, and then we have a week
and
off.
And then this week, the week's play. Okay, good. Thank you for reading my calendar. Yes, next week we'll have these all up. So next week when we get here, we'll have the stand up. And we're going to take our tops, which are back in here, and we're going to trim those down, clean them up, smooth them, turn them into squares, and do some of our detail. So next week, hopefully by the end, we'll be able to set a table up and put a top on it and have a stand. Then the week after that, we'll be able to find little details, the actual mounting of the top to it, and get all of that little thing set up in there. We probably won't do finishing live because it's finishing. You're probably going to want to finish it a different way than what we're doing. So, yeah. I think they'll do it. Anything else we're getting? Oh my! I completely forgot. Oh, for those of you watching, I meant to say this right off the bat, and I should have, but I forgot about it. Eric Florup. Yes, he had an emergency surgery. And for those of you who don't know him, he makes hand saws and is one of the premier handsaw makers in the community. And he went in for a headache. Doctor did a scan and said, "Oh my word, we have to do a surgery right now." And he went in for an emergency brain surgery. And he is in deep financial need at the moment. It's one of those things. He's a young, healthy guy who just had a brain tumor. And so his family is going through a crazy amount right now, and the whole woodworking community is coming together to help him out. So we have a GoFundMe. There's links to it down below as well as pinned in the chat. Please think about donating to help him out. One of the things I love about the woodworking community is we all come together and we help those in need. We build each other up rather than tearing each other down, and it's an awesome thing to watch. So if you have any amount you can help him out, it would be a huge blessing. If you go to his site, I don't know when he's going to be able to ship things out, but if you can help out the family, that would be absolutely amazing. I can't believe I forgot to say that until now. I meant to say it earlier, so sorry. But yeah.
It's pinned to the top, guys.
So I think I'll do it.
All right.
Until next time, have a wonderful day.
Bye.
Bye. I can't believe I forgot to say that. I was going to say it right off the bat.